In this video, I will be going over the events of the post-credits ending of the long-awaited Kingdom Hearts Dark Road finale, then explaining what it all means, as well as covering the large implications for the future of the series. Of course, this will all be one huge spoiler, so please be sure that you have experienced the game for yourself, or at very least the cutscenes, before watching this video. With that being said, let's dive in. 9 years prior to the disappearance of the upperclassmen, Xehanort's guardian sat by a fireside on a beautiful, cloudless night on the Destiny Islands. His young charge left the crudely constructed wooden shack that the pair called home and beckoned out to sea, before joining his guardian by the fire and curling up in his lap. The older person told the young boy that he was the Child of Destiny, a special child that is prophesied to save the world from darkness. Though Xehanort is currently confined to these isles for his own safety, that won't always be the case. When he is strong enough to overcome the darkness, he will venture out on his own, and in his journey he will encounter many, many people. It's through his interactions with these people that his heart will be guided, his thoughts shaped, his destiny laid. Xehanort seems overjoyed at the idea of leaving his home and seeing what's out there, and also wonders if when he gets strong enough, perhaps he might meet his mother again, still retaining scant memories of her from the small time they had together before she tearfully handed her newborn son to the person in the blue coat for his own protection. Thinking of his mother also reminds the young boy of a group of friends that Xehanort regularly sees in his dreams. One of these 6 people looks just like his mother, but there are also 5 others, including one that looks just like the person in blue. Speaking of these people makes the Guardian droop his head a little, and Xehanort asks what's wrong. Xehanort's Guardian grasps the youngster gently in his arms as the boy peacefully drifts to sleep, and is now completely convinced that Xehanort is the Child of Destiny. Xehanort has connected his heart to his guardians without even realizing it, and in Xehanort's dreams he regularly sees people and places that are actually his guardian's memories of what he describes as his first life. In that first life, this person lived in a town called Daybreak Town, where a copy of a manuscript known as the Book of Prophecies was handed to one of the Guardian's dear friends, even though most of its contents were never revealed. In the Guardian's next life, they learned that the light was to expire and darkness prevail. However, the Child of Destiny would alter this outcome. This prophesied child was said to have the ability to feel, share, and embrace what others felt in their hearts, and even connect their heart with another to become one, and would apparently hail from the Isles of Destiny. It seems like the robed man had more to say this night about his first and second lifetime, but still felt it was too soon. But over the years, Xehanort would grow, and surely more stories would be told. Years passed, and the boy was now a teenager, and the mysterious man had reached the end of his second lifetime. It was time for Xehanort to begin his own journey, an adventure in which he would meet many people, and be molded by many hearts. The robed figure believed that Xehanort would connect to others in the same way that he had connected to his guardian, but it would not always be a pleasant experience. Some hearts are simply not good, and will attempt to poison Xehanort's own, causing him to feel fear, hatred, hurt, sorrow, even tremendous loss. But he must not waver. He must continue down this path, and should he succeed, the road he walks will lead him into light and fellowship, and that ultimately, Xehanort will become Light's master. The blue-cloaked figure speaks with such certainty, is so convinced that Xehanort is the Child of Destiny, because he is the great-great-grandson of Ephema, someone that the blue-robed figure considers a dear friend. The Guardian has surely told Xehanort many things about both his first and second life. However, we will not get to hear any more of it in this installment. The end of this life has come, and the blue-coated figure's body is shown to fade into light, and their heart begins to float away. I feel like this scene is mostly symbolic. I don't think the old person in blue literally falls to the ground while Xehanort stands there uncaringly, but we are shown that the heart closes a lot of distance between itself and Xehanort, but seems to tilt skyward at the last moment. The heart has probably moved on to the final world, but you never know. Perhaps it may linger. So, what does all this mean? Who was that person in the blue coat? Well, it was us. At the end of Kingdom Hearts Union Cross, our playable character made the ultimate sacrifice. To quickly summarize, they, Ephema, and Skuld found themselves surrounded by 4 of the 13 primordial darknesses, and the player tricked Ephemer into stealing them away in a corridor between Data Daybreak Town and the rest of the Data worlds. As our character held their Chirithy friend in their arms, Data Daybreak Town began to enter a sort of sleep mode, something that the Master of Masters designed this world to do as soon as the arcs were used, to transport people out of this world as a failsafe if the darknesses here were unable to be defeated. To quote Brain, if something causes this world to freeze, it can be rebooted and restored. The end of this world is nothing like the end of the real one. Like I said, sleep mode. So Daybreak Town went to sleep, and all the residents of the world went to sleep along with it. As they entered the state of sleep, their own Chirithy partners protected them by merging their hearts into their bodies and taking on the appearance of spirit dream eaters. Our Chirithy told our character that they also had the option to fall asleep, but if they wanted to, they could refuse sleep, and their heart would melt into a new one instead. Our character then saw a brief instance of their new life. They saw a baby swaddled in a blanket being tearfully handed by its mother to a person in a blue cloak in a world that we later learned is called Scala ad Caelum. That person and the baby then begin their lives on Destiny Islands, that lasts until the baby is grown into a young teenager, at which point the person in the blue cloak passes away, seemingly from natural causes. The youth, which we can clearly recognize as Xehanort, will then return to Scala ad Caelum and eventually form a strong friendship with another boy named Ericus. The player seems at peace with their decision and refuses sleep, melting away into their new life. Dark Road also began with shots of Xehanort dreaming about the player's adventure throughout Kingdom Hearts Key, and so when Union Cross's finale came out, it seemed safe to assume that the person the player was melting into was Xehanort. However, as of Dark Road's ending, that assumption was definitely proven incorrect. In a long line of beautifully meta moments, our Kingdom Hearts Key's character's second life seems to be that of the protagonist of Kingdom Hearts Missing Link. When we load up Missing Link and begin to play as our chosen avatar, we are again canonically a person of some importance in the story of Kingdom Hearts. It isn't clear whether or not our Missing Link character will always have complete memories from their previous life, whether the memories will slowly trickle back to them over time, or whether there will be some sort of instigating event that allows the player to gain back their original memories. Say for example, perhaps they meet their original Chirithy again, a being literally designed to hold on to its chosen wielder's memories, but it almost doesn't matter. It's this awesome Kingdom Hearts meta moment again. We, the actual player holding the controller, remember the events of Kingdom Hearts Key and Union Cross, so maybe that's enough. We can assume that the playable character of Missing Link will have their own adventures and battle against their fair share of enemies, and it's possible we've already seen them from the Missing Link trailer. This person all dressed in white could feasibly serve as the default appearance of the Missing Link protagonist before you customize them, but either way, it seems like at some point in our character's second lifetime that they will discover what sounds like an almost word-for-word retelling of the final page of the Book of Prophecies. Light will see defeat and expire, and darkness will prevail evermore. However, whereas the foretellers heard this passage and unsuccessfully tried to avert it in their own ways, it seems like the people of Missing Link placed their faith in a Child of Destiny, a prophesized child that will save the world from darkness. Player is aware of Xehanort's lineage. He will be born to a mother who looks remarkably like Skuld, and is believed to be Ephemer's great-great-grandson. We don't know how much information the player actually has, but they seem utterly convinced that this child is the fated Child of Destiny. So much so that they are willing to spend the rest of their natural life on the Destiny Islands to protect Xehanort from the darkness, as well as to ensure that Xehanort hails from these isles as prophesized. However, players' devotion to Ephemer may be blinding them. Whether it is Xehanort himself or one of his various alter egos, Xehanort has been the central antagonist for essentially every Kingdom Hearts game thus far, by Union Cross. He has a large role in causing the Keyblade War that, by all current understandings, is the war written about in those final pages of the Book of Prophecies, and he is most certainly not the child that averts the disaster. But it sounds like Xehanort spends his entire life believing that he is. The Dark Road secret ending implies that player has told Xehanort of his role as the Child of Destiny many times, and perhaps laid too many expectations upon him. 10 years later, a year after the tragic events of the upperclassman's disappearance, Xehanort will be preparing for his own Mark of Mastery exam by travelling the various worlds to broaden his horizons. On his quest, he travels through a corridor of darkness, feeling far different emotions than he did on his initial adventure. These corridors of darkness are corrosive to even Keyblade armor. Xehanort and his classmates know this all too well, and even with the armor's protection, he can still feel the darkness seeping further into his heart. However, as we know, Xehanort has been raised to believe that he is the child of destiny, and that his heart will be able to weather any challenge. No darkness can overcome him, and so he forgoes his armor's protection, nearly succumbing to its instant influence. He is only saved by the intervention of the enigmatic man known as the Master of Masters, who is traveling the corridors of darkness at this very moment, and refers to Xehanort as the Singularity. The Master offers Xehanort the iconic black coat that will be seen many more times throughout the Kingdom Hearts series, and among the things the pair discuss, the Master of Masters brings up the idea of a kind of false light. Emotions that one could feel towards someone they love that aren't necessarily good or well-meaning. Perhaps the well-intentioned player has instilled Xehanort with a harmful level of faith that has done more damage than good. 65 years later, Xehanort again embarks on another voyage through these dark depths, this time with a gravely wounded Ventus in tow. This must chronologically follow the attempt to split Ventus into darkness and light, and the idea to leave his body on the Destiny Islands to peacefully die, before he decided to bring him to his old friend Eraqus's to be raised in the light. Here, Xehanort again believes that his heart is strong, and that as such he can withstand the strain of the overwhelming corrosive emotions found in these corridors. He remembers back to his original mentor, the player character, embarking on a similar journey with his newborn self, and recalls that his mentor taught Xehanort that the one inscribed in the book, the one chosen to be a dark vessel, can connect their hearts to others and feel what they feel. He opens his arms wide as if to embrace the darkness, and lets them flow into his heart and questions, will he finally be deemed worthy? After all this time, it seems like Xehanort still believes he is the child of destiny, that his is the righteous path, and yet still seems to not feel worthy of the mantle. As we know from Kingdom Hearts 3, Xehanort's crusade will ultimately conclude with him finally creating the Keyblade. He will summon Kingdom Hearts, and begin the purge of all worlds, resetting everything back to whence it started, something he learned about in Dark Road. Even in defeat, Xehanort reasons that this was all in service of using the light of Kingdom Hearts to give a fresh start to the worlds that have found themselves infected with darkness like a plague. But Sora, Xehanort's conqueror, tells the old master that
it wasn't your decision to make.
Then whose was it? The world needs someone to stand up and lead. Someone strong, to stop the weak from polluting the world with their endless darkness. Someone to dictate their destiny.
If so, you're not that person, Xehanort.
Sora stares down Xehanort, his resolve unwavering, and in those eyes, Xehanort sees something that reminds him of an old friend. As the rest of the Guardians of Light arrive after defeating the Dark Vessels, Eraqus's heart emerges from Terra's body and demands he hand over the Keyblade. But Xehanort is stubborn, and even now when he is completely outnumbered, he still clings to the idea that he is the one that must do this. But Eraqus's kind words finally get through to the Old Master, and Xehanort peacefully entrusts Sora with the Keyblade. After refusing to see him as anything more than a pawn, simply a dull, ordinary boy, and genuinely unwilling to even consider a reality in which Sora would beat him, perhaps Xehanort now sees Sora for what he truly is. It makes complete sense for Sora to be the true child of destiny. In much the same way that Blank Points, the secret ending of Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, was a beautiful homage to Sora and all the people that were counting on him to save them, the Dark Road ending also features a loving description of the hero of this entire series. Sora has met and interacted with so many people, even if he has never met them in person, and it is explicitly stated that Sora is who he is because of them. Like Xehanort, Sora can also feel and share what is in the hearts of others, and as seen with Ventus, Roxas, Xion, and even Kairi, Sora has connected his heart with those of others to become one. Sora was of course actually born and raised on the Destiny Islands, perhaps laying more of a claim to the title than Xehanort, who moved there shortly after his birth. And of course, Sora has encountered endless darkness as well, feeling so much suffering, especially in Kingdom Hearts 3 at the tragic loss of his friends, as light faded and darkness prevailed. But as the prophecy says, the Child of Destiny averted this outcome. Sora punctured a hole in the fabric of time and emerged into a world where light triumphed over the darkness, at great personal cost. From all the information we have so far, it truly seems like Sora fits the description, and perhaps he will rise to the mantle of Light's master in Kingdom Hearts 4, if he's not there already. Perhaps young Xehanort himself even recognizes this. One particular scene in Kingdom Hearts 3 has always stuck with me. After all young Xehanort's grandstanding and bravado, in a moment where only Sora can hear what he is saying, he takes the opportunity to whisper,
Wait! Find the hearts joined to yours.
Perhaps the young man realizes that while he can't outright betray his future self, maybe from his perspective he sees that instead of wasting his life trying to live up to expectations he will never reach, perhaps Sora is the true inheritor of the mantle. So despite sharing many of Sora's attributes with him, and Boulder for that matter, and despite what player believes, I don't think Xehanort is the true destined child. So where does that leave Xehanort then, if his role in all of this is not to be the child of destiny? The Master of Masters referred to Xehanort as the Singularity, which is something I find extremely interesting that I will hopefully touch on later, but something that really stuck with me was when Master Odin stated that the Seeker of Darkness would finally be upon them. Of course, the title of Seeker of Darkness has been a concept ever since the very first Kingdom Hearts game, but Master Odin seems to consider it as some sort of prophesized arrival. Of course, at that point, Boulder will soon reveal his grand plan as a person corrupted by darkness, but the way Odin speaks, I almost wonder if the Seeker of Darkness is something that is also covered by the Book of Prophecies that perhaps the player doesn't know about, and an archetype that Xehanort fits into perfectly. As Vidar said, true light is something that shines even in the face of confusion and uncertainty, and the light truly had to shine bright to snuff out the overwhelming darkness that Xehanort wrought. This is getting out of hand for an explanation of a 6-minute cutscene, so let me quickly touch on Xehanort's mother, a woman that looks remarkably like Skuld, though who has been confirmed to be a separate person from Skuld. Just quickly, several possibilities come to mind with varied probability of being true. One option, Skuld did not time travel into the future at all. She, off-screen, washed ashore slightly after Ephema did, and together the pair maybe started a family together, where the pair's great-granddaughter bore a very similar appearance to Skuld, something that I feel like is a fairly common trope. Or perhaps she didn't necessarily pair up with Ephema at all, but she is somewhere else along the family tree, even if she actually did time travel, but just not as far into the future as Brain or Ven or anyone else did. But I feel like Player has a lot of respect for Skuld as well, which is why I find it strange that if Skuld truly was his family member, he wouldn't mention Skuld when describing Xehanort's lineage to him, and only mention Ephema. Another option, Skuld at the very least must have had parents, so perhaps she also had siblings, and perhaps these hypothetical siblings wound up in Scarlet Adkylum after Daybreak Town's destruction, and again, now exist as Xehanort's ancestors. If Skuld or one of her relatives is in Xehanort's family tree, I feel like Missing Link will let us know. I feel like it's very probable that the playable character of Missing Link will be an active Keyblade wielder at the time of Xehanort's and Eraqus' grandparents, no matter who they are, and it's possible that they may even be major characters in the story. I mean, it's already heavily implied that Brain is Eraqus' grandfather. If Skuld is an ancestor of Xehanort though, that suddenly destroys one of the major current fan theories that people have about the identity of Subject X. The only clues we have about Subject X's identity so far are that at the time she was discovered in Radiant Garden, she was an approximately 15-year-old amnesiac girl, with the only details that she was able to recall about her life, implying that she originated from the Age of Fairy Tales. She remembered 4 friends and a key, and the phrase, "May your heart be your guiding key," but very little else. Skuld seemed to fit the description quite well, especially in the light of the Union Cross finale. However, if she either didn't time travel or didn't travel into the present, well, then that basically rules out her chances of being Subject X. I'd say that puts the next most likely candidate for being Subject X as Master Ava, given that she was not in attendance with the other foretellers that were summoned back to this world after the conclusion of Xehanort's Keyblade War. It's worth noting that Ava and Skuld have been described as being very similar to each other multiple times in the past. Perhaps those similarities are not just in personality, but also in appearance. Though, I do like the idea that we could potentially have both scenarios about Skuld be true. What if Skuld is still Subject X, but sometime after being rescued by the man with the eye patch, she time travels again back to the past? Dark Road established that Xehanort would like to see his mother again, and Ansem the Seeker of Darkness showed a great desire to locate Subject X. I don't know that we can completely rule Skuld out of the running for being Subject X just yet. That's outside the scope of this video though, so perhaps we should leave things off here. Dark Road was an experience that I really enjoyed and I think was well worth the wait, and I am extremely excited for everything it sets up for Missing Link, and I hope you all are too. There is still plenty more to cover, including the main Dark Road story itself, so I hope you will subscribe and stay tuned for more. All the best, friends. We'll talk soon. Bye bye.